Well, I'm here to talk to you today about an issue that is very big in the United States and around the world that's of great interest, and it's global warming. And the reason I'm here to talk to you is because it's of major concern, but there's a lot of misinformation. And so really what I'm here to talk about is if you are given the wrong information, you will come to the wrong conclusion. So I anticipate this as being a several-part series, and we'll highlight some things, and we'll kind of go over some of the issues that really get on my nerves. Now, I was recently out in Washington, D.C., and I read this report, The National Security and the Threat of Climate Change. And as I was reading the report, I found so much information, and I questioned him and said, you know, when it comes to our national security and climate change, especially there, if you have the wrong information, you're going to come to the wrong conclusion. So I'll give you a couple pieces today on what is the wrong information and what is out there in the public and what are our kids learning. And I'm going to start with this piece of information here. It's in a book called Down to Earth. Now, this book is sold by Scholastic booksellers to our children. And they try to convince our kids that CO2 is driving the temperature. And so they show this graph where the temperature, the CO2 is up higher here, driving the temperature in the blue. So the red is the CO2 driving the temperature in the blue. But in reality, what we have is it was inverted. You see, the temperature is actually driving the CO2. And we know today, with all the research that has been done on all the proxy data being ice cores, sedimentation cores, stalactites, stalagmites, and caves, tree stumps, pollen, but all the proxy data and all the research done on proxy data, meaning ways we can tell what's happened in the past, we know with 100% certainty that CO2 has never in the past, nor will it under any known circumstances today, drive temperature. So that is the basic piece of information that is wrong in the whole debate. You need to understand CO2, and in a future edition of this, we'll actually talk about the molecular structure of CO2 and why it can't drive any issues. But that's your first wrong piece of information I want to get to you today is CO2 never has in the past driven temperature. It will never be anticipated today on any known science to ever drive temperature. So that is your first wrong assumption. The secondary thing I'm going to talk about is we talk about how in the next 10 years, boy, we could have sea levels raise and we could have all this flooding and all these other interesting things happening that really cause fear and crisis. Well, guess what? I'm going to take you into a piece of information here today. Projected ice melt based on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Yes, this is in the report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their fourth assessment. And this is the projected ice melt on Greenland. And we can talk about that projected ice melt, but first you have to assume their temperature projections are right, and they're wrong, and we'll talk about that in another edition of this. But in this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it shows you volume 100% at year one. And the first thing I want you to notice is volume 20% reduction is 270 years from year one. So you don't even lose the first 20% of ice for 270 years. Now, is that enough time for you and other cities to plan, to make some differences, assuming they're right, assuming it's going to melt? And by the way, that'll bring you up about a foot and a half of sea level rise at first 20%. And that's well within the normal that we've seen from all the proxy data. And also this assumes, if you read the bottom lines here, it assumes 4 times the level of CO2 of pre-industrial, and that is geared somewhere between 280 and 300 parts per million. Today we're at 385 parts per million. We're not seeing the ice melt, and we'll talk about that later. But these are 2 major misconceptions, and you need to know it, and you need to get the info to your friends. Thanks.